Good morning, I'm Marilyn and I'm from the 10 a.m. service and I'm going to be doing the Bible readings today. And our first reading comes from John chapter 5, starting at verse 8. Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." But once the man was cured, he picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath, and so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It is a Sabbath, and the law forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at work to this very day, and I am working too." For this is the reason they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling him God, his own Father, making himself equal to God. And verse 36, "I have testimony greater than that of John, for the works of the Father has given me the finish. The very works that I am doing testify that the Father has sent me, and the Father who sent me himself testified concerning me. You have never heard his voice nor seen his form, nor does his word dwell in you if you do not believe the one who sent me. You study the scriptures diligently because you think of them in your eternal life. These are the very scriptures that testify about me, yet you refuse to come to me to life. Do not accept glory from human beings, but I know you, and I know that you do not have love in your hearts. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not accept me. But if someone else comes in his own name, you will accept him. How can you believe since you accept glory from one another, but not seek the glory that comes from God? Do you not think I will accuse you before the Father? Your accuser Moses, to whom your hopes are set. If you believe Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But since you do not believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say?" And our second reading is Hebrews chapter 3, starting at verse 15 through to chapter 4, verse 11. As had just been said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did in the rebellion. Who were they who heard and rebelled? Were they not all that Moses led out of Egypt? And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose bodies perished in the wilderness? And to whom did God swear that they would not enter his rest, if not to those who disobeyed? So we see that they were not able to enter because of their unbelief. Therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. For we have also good news proclaimed to us, just as they did. But the message they heard was of no value to them because they did not share the faith to those who obeyed. Now we who have believed enter that rest, just as God has said. So I declare an oath on my anger, they shall never enter my rest. And as yet his works have been finished since the creation of the world. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in these words. On the seventh day God rested from all his works. And again in the passage above he says, "They shall never enter my rest." Therefore, since it still remains to some to enter that rest, and since those who formerly had the good news proclaimed to them did not go in because of disbelief, God said this he did a long time later, he spoke through David, as in the passage already quoted. "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts." For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken later about another day. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests upon his work, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. This is the word of the Lord.